Hello and welcome to Flaunt, create a life you love after infidelity or betrayal. I'm Lora Cheadle, and today I have a man on the show. Not only a man, but his name is Dr. Ray, and he is a best-selling author and he is a life and relationship coach. And what I really liked about looking at his website and going through his work is it mirrored so much of mine. You know how I always talk about the first step is revealing yourself. He also has a lot about revealing yourself, about moving through that one limiting belief. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to have a really good conversation, but my intention for this show is to give you information, to give you inspiration, and also to have a smart man, validate some of the things that you might be wondering or thinking. So, welcome to the show, Dr. Ray.
Thank you. This will be fun, and I hope I can really help your audience really move into that space of knowing that it's not about them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's start with a little bit of a background on you. I know you're a relationship coach, but what does that mean? A lot of people might be going, I'm not exactly sure what that means. So, talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, when most people hear that I'm a life and relationship coach, they might automatically think I focus on couples or a relationship with another human being, which is true. However, where my work always goes is the relationship with ourselves. When, say, as an example, your husband cheats on you, well, in that moment, you might turn it around on yourself, such as, was I not attractive enough to, was there something I did wrong? So in that process, it's your own consciousness kind of turn around and asking these questions. And if you have a negative relationship with yourself, such as it's typically more negative, then there's a good chance that you will create even more negative narratives about his behaviors and actions as it's something that you did, you created, and therefore you turn around, you go into the space of self-deprecation and feel worse. And so with every client, we always turn it around inward so that person can recognize that, wait a minute, that if it is how I relate to myself and how I feel right now doesn't feel good right now, then if I can learn some tools and I can reframe what had happened, then maybe I'll start having more positive talk about myself and therefore start to feel better and move past this, regardless if, he cheated on me,
Hmm.
regardless if we're going to get a divorce, regardless if I am divorced, that life moves forward and I better start having a better relationship with myself anyway.
Yeah. And I love that. And that is so powerful because at the end of the day, it is all about you anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you work it out, your partner could pass away unexpectedly. I mean, I hate to say that, but
Yeah.
it is about you. You have to find peace with yourself no
Mhm.
matter what.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
yeah, one of the things you mentioned, and I'm big on tools too, is tools to help move from that state of grief, shock. Oh my gosh, it's all about me to reclaiming your brain so you can start giving yourself some of that positive self-talk. And what I mean, I'm just going to give a little example before I come in with your answer. I have always had very positive self-regard. I've got higher self-esteem, I've got a lot of confidence, and yet still, when I found out my husband had cheated on me for 15 years with five women who were really nasty, gross women, let me tell you all of the horrible thoughts that went through my mind. Let me tell you all of the grief that I went through. And it took a while and it took some tools for me to get back to who I was before. So that's the frame that I would like to put around your answer. What are some of these tools? How can you get back to who you were before? And if who you were before could have used a little bit of brushing up, how can you increase your self-esteem, self-worth, self-regard?
I really like that segue because you mentioned if the former self of you was ignoring the red flags,
Yep.
if the former self of you was had this idea that the relationship was completely safe, therefore there's nothing to be concerned about, then of course you might, recognize that or start having the thoughts of maybe I could have done it better. It doesn't mean that it would have prevented him from cheating, but that maybe this is about me, the new better version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes the shock is this, and it's that we had an attachment to something never changing. We had an attachment that we're going to trust his words and who he is over our own self-trust,
Yes.
right? Right?
Yes.
That we gave up a lot of our power in that relationship. Therefore, a big part of why we might feel this way being cheated on is that we knew something. Our intuition was correct 5, 10, 15 years ago and ignore the red flags. And so it's not about backpedaling, going, I screwed up and this is why this happened. It's more that it did happen. And therefore, what was it that I could have done better back then?
Mm-hmm.
What part of me is still not being authentic right now? And what version of myself do I want to become from this? How do I gather the higher learning? So if you're actually asking for a tool, some of the tools are like this. If a person says, wow, I sensed he was going to do this, or when we stopped having sex for a year or 2 years, I didn't remain curious. What was that about me? And not about me as a screwed up individual, but more what was going on in my life? Why was I ignoring this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it about this that I didn't want to lean into? And that person might say, wow, I was afraid of leaning into conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There might have been a secondary gain that I was afraid to be alone. And therefore, I was willing to just take breadcrumbs, from this relationship. We start recognizing and taking accountability of like how we showed up and whether we showed up as full as we can be. Again, I do want to emphasize that the cause and effect thing. Never should we like blame ourselves for a partner's coping mechanism, whether it's cheating, gambling, doing drugs, or whatever. Okay.
Right.
However, what we could get from that anyway is how we can participate better in that relationship or future relationship. And that's most important. The only time maybe you are at fault, it'd be where he's in couples therapy with you. He's saying, I'm interested in another woman. And
Right.
because we don't have a relationship, I'm finding interest, rarely does that happen. Then,
No.
then you might go, hey, wait a minute, I thought it was just a feeling. I thought it was a metaphor. Then of course, but most of the time that doesn't happen.
No.
Does not happen. By the way, I want to bring this up.
Yeah.
I did see a woman who started having an affair, uh, and she had a husband who wasn't doing anything with her, wasn't taking her out. He was really frugal, always putting all his eggs into the basket of the future, such as we can't do this because we're trying to pay off this condo, just making excuses. And
Right.
where she felt this disconnect. She met a friend, originally a tennis coach, of course,
Of course.
and and here he was present with her, talking to her. They were hanging out as friends. And she even brought him home to the house as a friend. And her husband started saying, yeah, go out with so and so, go hiking with him. It was like basically give him permission. So a year went by and she developed feelings for him.
Yep.
And what was interesting about this is that uh, because she felt bad about it and she didn't know what to do, was when her husband still was shocked by what had happened.
Wow.
Yes, shocked. Like, and so sometimes, I'm not saying that women listening to this are going to go, that was me, but, I do know that all of us yearn to feel, be seen, to
Yes.
feel love, to feel that connection. And that just because we're married doesn't mean that we don't have to keep relating every day. That just
Exactly.
because we're married, it doesn't mean that he's not having his own life experiences, his own judgments about himself, his own problems, and so forth. So the best we can do is just show up presently as ourselves to be as authentic as we can be, lean into conflict, and just hopefully the relationship has good communication skills so both people can feel they could be transparent. And that's how you grow and expand. And that's how you rediscover each other every day. But I do know that I'm kind of segueing into something else is that that's an issue with a lot of men is
Yes.
that they won't open up. They don't share. They create hidden transgressions in which women could have fixed, earlier on.
Mhm.
That they kind of go into their own little world and try to do it themselves. To they're just not speaking up of things that they wish that would show up in the relationship a little bit better. And so they kind of create this reality experience that, it's just never going to happen in my relationship. They don't want to talk. And
Hmm.
I know more, it's a generalization. Women have a tendency to really want to get to know their husbands.
Yeah.
Is that crazy? Like, I want
Yes.
to know you, even if it hurts my feelings, tell me
Let them
that you're
know.
mad at me.
Mhm.
Even though it hurts my feelings, please trust that I will deal with whatever you share with me,
Yeah.
no matter what. Because yes, many of these women might even be independent, where they're like, well, whether you stay or not, give me as much information so I can work with that, so I
Yes.
can participate. And that's usually what comes up when they're blindsided by their
Yes.
husband cheating, when they're like, throughout the relationship, what's going on? How you feeling? And the husband's like, don't worry about it. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot for a lot of the listeners of the show. Some of the things that I hear often is, I was completely blindsided. I
Mhm.
do all the work. I read all the books. I'm very self-aware. I do all this stuff. He is not participating. He's not answering the questions. He's not engaging with me. So, relationship skills, I mean, a relationship is two, whether it's you and yourself or you and another person. How do you handle the situation where you are the one doing the work and you are the one saying, I'm being authentic, I'm being vulnerable, my feelings are hurt, I'm having needs here, I would like to go deeper. And your partner either stonewalls or gets defensive or just has no interest in the skills.
Well, so first off, if your partner is not doing the work,
Hmm.
more than likely you both are going to have a different level of consciousness and awareness.
Hmm.
Therefore, in a way, if you are reading self-help books to you're just more curious and you have surrounded yourself with friends who are also expanding their awareness, then the person you're married to is this like also like maybe he matches your former self, but he's not connected to who you're becoming. And that's what women want more than anything else. It's just, please keep up with me.
Yes.
Please keep up with me. Yes, we met in college, but I'm not that person anymore. I was insecure. I
Right.
felt embarrassed about how I looked when I shouldn't have. I've worked through that shit. And like you still dwell in that space. And I can see, you're not like motivated to better yourself. You seem to uh, like what's more as far as set in stone versus inviting change. And I
Yes.
want you to keep up with me. And
Yes.
so, yeah.
So this leads right into the concept of self-sabotage. And I know you do a lot of work around self-sabotage. I'm seeing two different sides of the coin on this. The man who is not keeping up is sabotaging themselves in a lot of ways. The man who cheats, totally sabotaging themselves, but also the woman who settles. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying the woman who keeps trying until she realizes it's not going to work. I'm speaking to the woman who's like, I guess I just have to deal with it. So, talk
Yes.
about self-sabotage on both sides of that coin, please.
Well, there's a lot of women out there who use their feelings over his actions.
Yes.
There's a lot of women who wait for their partner's potentiality rather than accept where
Yeah.
he's at right now and use that information, including before they got married. Like a lot of men will show up and that's what you get. And I witnessed it in real time and say I was working with a couple and the man was 47, she was 34, and she still wanted to have a child. And they've been together for 15 years. And he said, I'm just not really interested in having a child. And he also said to her in front of both of us that his career was more important, that making money, that whole getting all the ducks in place scenario that you often will hear from a lot of men. And she says, well, you would make a real good father. I know,
It's in
you
you
like
somewhere.
children. Yeah, and then he even said, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Like she thinks she doesn't hear that I don't want to have a child,
Right.
but still she was overriding, whatever he said with wishful thinking. So
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it to that degree, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's really important to listen to a man's words, but also watch his actions. So the next thing I asked was, how long has he been saying that? Like he's trying to get his career together? Since I met him. Okay. I said, well, what if he doesn't get there for the rest of his life?
Yes.
I mean, are you like betting on his potentiality? And so
Yeah.
now I'll go to answer the question about the self-sabotage. It looks like this. First off, it could be a situation where actually he is a good man. He's sharing truths, and you get triggered, and you start creating a uh,
Yeah.
negative projections onto him, and you might send out a negative text message. You might come off needy. Well, that's coming within. That's a way you can sabotage, say, the communication in that way. But the self-sabotage also, whether he's a jerk or not, looks like this. It's that there are moments where you think about the better version of your life you'd want to move in a direction towards.
Mm-hmm.
But you recognize that he has lied to you so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And then you expect something different. You expect some type of change. So therefore, when he cheats again, or you have that conversation again and he gaslights you, you feel disappointed. It is because you showed up in a way not honoring how you truly feel and trusting your consciousness and trusting your intuition. Therefore, you keep participating and say his problems or his lack of communication to only, like, say, experience that negativity again and even be blamed for this. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm just giving you a couple versions of self-sabotaging, but there's other ways also. I hope that help explain some of this.
Yeah, it does. And go back. What is the definition of self-sabotage? Because some listeners might be thinking, well, I kind of get what you're meaning, but I don't really know what that is.
It is where you have an expectation
Mm-hmm.
of things to be different, and then when it doesn't work out that way, you turn it in and feel bad about it again and again. That's a form of self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
It could be where uh, you know what the right decision is to do, but you're afraid to move into that conflict. There might be a secondary gain for you that you're not admitting.
Mm-hmm.
That is why you stay in a relationship and you allow yourself to get hurt again. And therefore, that's a form of self-sabotaging. It is also where you go out on a date with your partner and your jealousy gets kicked up. You think he's looking at a waitress, but he's not. You start an argument, and there's a pattern of you starting arguments a lot when you go out. Therefore, you don't have a good evening because you just now self-sabotage because you haven't healed that, say, unhealed trauma when your father cheated on your mother.
Right.
These are different forms of self-sabotage to just even this. It's where you you deep inside you feel really insecure, like you're going to strike out. Usually I share this scenario with men who like baseball, but uh, and you go on that job interview, and all you do is have like thoughts about how you're not good enough, and therefore you botch it, you know, during that interview.
Mm-hmm.
Self-sabotage. I
Mm-hmm.
could keep giving you examples, but that's what self-sabotage is. So I
Right.
didn't really give you a definition. I gave you more examples.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. Um, You've used this phrase a couple of times, afraid to move into conflict. And I want to have a conversation around that because sometimes we're wisely afraid of conflict. Sometimes it is not the time to address something. Sometimes there are legitimate reasons to just let something go and move on. And yet, still, that can become a very damaging negative habit. So, how do you know if you were really afraid to move into conflict or if you were just being wise and giving your partner grace and keeping the peace to keep everybody safe?
Well, first off, you're right. You are an attorney. Listen to everything I say. That's why I started smiling when you said you've said uh, avoiding conflict a few times, which is really great.
You got it.
Yeah, I know exactly. I'm like, oh, all right. The attorney's coming out.
It is the definitions and
Yeah,
all of that. Old
I
habits die.
love it. Yeah, yeah, you do. You're really good at these questions. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example.
Yes.
And I like to give examples because it gives a bigger picture, and I feel it's more relatable because
Mhm.
it's also happening in real time right now. So, um, my co-partner, or not co-partner, my girlfriend, she has a co-partner,
Yeah.
and she has a child with this man. And she had a meeting with him yesterday, and it did not go very well at all. And he gaslights, he
Hmm.
makes the conversation about himself. He avoids these meetings, so therefore it could take her a month to have this meeting. And uh, so when the meeting happens, typically it's not just one topic, it's several to discuss things that have to do with, say, improving their co-parenting arrangements or things that can help their son. Okay.
Right.
And so she has this idea that the relationship has gotten better because 10 years ago he left for a year. He has, he wasn't paying any help for her child to, he had even once spitted on her.
Oh,
Oh yeah, yes. So, uh, so it went from that to where they can communicate now a little bit. It's where now that there is respectful, in some ways, communication.
hmm.
However, when you step back from it, nothing's really changed, and it's this. She has to always wait when it's the perfect time for him. And so
Right.
the relationship revolves around him. To when she writes stuff to get things done, she'll always send those messages to me to see what I think, or has it corrected to make it even softer on ChatGPT because he gets defensive. She
Yes.
constantly is walking on eggshells so he can receive information and does not get defensive. And so much of where they are right now is because she's afraid of that conflict.
Hmm.
And so she's the one who directs the relationship. She's the one who does everything. And almost every time they make a decision, whether it's changing a school or doing something to improve their son's life, like get a tutor, it has always worked out. But he always has resistance. He always has to feel like he's a part of it. And he really doesn't have that much to say. So she's holding so much of this. And
Yes.
where she's like, in a way, she has to hold space for this man who acts like an immature child.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm sharing this because they're also where they're at right now is because this was still happening 3 years after they got past the whole, like when it was really aggressive. 5 years after that, it's still been that way because she's trying to wait when it's the perfect timing. When
Right.
this man has a history of wrecking relationships, this man has a history of creating problems and gaslighting and so forth. So, in a way, it's like she's trying to avoid something that's not avoidable. And
Right.
therefore, it keeps piling up and piling up. And so, this whole idea of leaning into conflict, I hear it. And there's this idea there's going to be a better timing. Sometimes there is, such as if your parent just passed away and
Right.
you're not going to go, hey, are we going to be looking at, a new home anytime soon? Not the
Right.
best timing. If your partner's been drinking and you also, not good timing.
No.
Okay. Uh, if it's the idea that you have an expectation for him to receive you in a way you want, that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, by the way, can sabotage yourself as well. Uh, so therefore, you try to find the perfect timing to share that information. In a way, you're playing God. You
Yes.
have to allow him to react. You have to allow him to be himself. In other words, I think so many women out there become like natural caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
They get into the people pleasing uh,
Mm-hmm.
syndrome where they're trying to keep everyone happy. And within themselves and their nervous systems, I get it because maybe unconsciously they're afraid the man can actually hit them.
Exactly.
That happens. To they're afraid of their reputation. They're afraid of how the community might look at them and so forth. And so they're the ones keeping all this peace at the home and trying to avoid that conflict. But here's the thing to really take into your body when you hear this. You're at conflict every moment, every minute, thinking about how you have to navigate who your authentic self is with him. That doesn't feel good
No,
at
that's
all.
exhausting.
Oh, absolutely. In a man, if he keeps getting reactive, that's on him to go see a coach or therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You're not to be his coach or therapist.
No. And
And
I'm glad you said that because so many women, and I know I was guilty of it too, I can take care of this. I can fix this. Let me just tell you what you need to do. Let me just explain the impact that that had on me. And then we start becoming almost overbearing because we're so desperately trying to seed information, to seed, this is what you should do. And it's toxic. I'd love to hear from your point of view as a man what it's like when a woman does that.
take over and lead.
Yes.
First off, I, as a man, have never had that happen because I'm pretty masculine
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a take charge type of person. And my father raised me that way, who was in the Marines for 30 years, fought in World War II, the Korean War, and 3 tours in Vietnam, and lived through 400 battles. So
Mm-hmm.
he had to have some really good leadership. And so therefore, I have not had that experience. However, some relationships that did not work out were those types of women who, whether it was conscious or not, felt more comfortable being in control because of, say, trust issues. And therefore, the sexual polarity fizzled out. My One of my best friends is that person. She's this godmother of my son. She calls me sweetie pie still. And when we dated 15, 16 years ago, there were moments where, because her mother was very controlling also,
Mm-hmm.
really bossy, that form of communication never really felt good for me. So it turned me off. There's moments I wouldn't say I felt like a little boy, but being spoken
Right.
down to like a little boy did not feel good.
Yes.
But how most men feel with that is this. It's that if you tell him you statements, he's going to experience you like his mother.
Hmm.
If he hears you in a way where you're telling him what to do, it could feel like you're trying to be his boss. And if he really wants to be that masculine person and you're moving into that motherly type of communication, it will turn him off. Women will say, well, how do I go about this? And it'd be this. I'll give you an example. When uh, I'm just use this example because it just happened. My girlfriend. So let's just say because we brought this example anyway. What if she were to say, "You're so irresponsible. You're fucking arrogant, and like it's about our son, and you always make it about yourself." Now, of course, he's going to get defensive. A
Right.
better way might be this: I don't feel safe to have these conversations with you. I
Right.
feel like you go off topic and therefore we don't get things, we don't move into a place where there's harmony. And I would like to improve this. What do you think or feel about this?
Right.
Because in that exchange, when she say, if she were to attack him, she's coming from that place of feeling afraid or whatever it is. The only thing that she can own is how she's feeling in that raw moment
Hmm.
and let him respond with how he might respond. Now, I know women will go, well, he gets defensive anyway, to he just looks at you and doesn't respond with anything. Well, that's your feedback. That's your
Right.
feedback. He's not ready. So you might take this conversation into a therapist's office, or you might recognize that he's not mature enough, or that you might suggest, other things like you might say, I don't need a perfect answer. I just want us to feel like there's some togetherness. I
Mhm.
don't need you to, and because sometimes, a lot of times men will go, I do this for you. They start talking about their efforts and they don't feel appreciated.
Right.
Therefore, there could be some truth in that.
Hmm.
So it might be when you start the conversation off, it first begins with this. I know you're doing your best. I really appreciate your efforts. I really like the ways in which you're showing up. I would love to improve some things, hear that? That I
Yeah.
think you can make it better. So there'd be that bridge where he hears this as, oh, I might get benefits from here. I have a happier wife. I have a more sensual wife. I have a
Yes.
wife who's appreciating me. And
Hmm.
again, this doesn't always work because there's a
No.
lot of men out there who have avoided looking at their true emotions. They create these narratives that are not even true about their partner, and then oftentimes they'll take really poor actions on that,
Yes.
such as cheating.
Yes. And that's just what I was going to say. I love, because we talk about this a lot in the show too, the narratives that get created. And then the man cheats based on some story in his head. And the women are going, wait, what? How, why did you even think that about me? It
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, you know, I have, well, here's something to share, and this can really trigger women, and it's this. I have worked with women who felt like the intimacy was lacking. And sometimes it was because they let themselves go, like
Hmm.
they really did. And that led to, it wasn't just their body, that they actually became very depressed, maybe even feeling more
Right.
bad about their body than their husband. Okay. And I have seen these couples show up and he doesn't want to say anything. He's
Hmm.
afraid. And when he has, she's gotten defensive, such as, 2 years ago, I lost my father. That actually happened to my business. My business failed. Well, and I know that life is filled with a lot of failures. It's what you do with it. And
Hmm.
so, whether it's a man or woman, if we let ourselves go, whether it's our physical body, whether it's our happiness, whether it's our own attraction to ourselves, because if we're not attracted to ourselves and how we're
Nope.
living our life, we're not going to be interested in having sex or interested or attracted to our partner. It shows up that way. And that's a really challenging conversation to have because more often people take that personally.
Right.
So and I don't want women to think because they can just take this out of context and go, so what you're saying, it's my fault. Or what you're saying is
Right.
that I always have to look beautiful and beyond. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that oftentimes we participate in a certain way and we're not open to receiving that feedback.
Hmm.
And so a person might start to shut down. I don't think that partner should cheat on their wife, but it's owning that part where he could not communicate. And those are
Right.
situations where it leads to the conversation of I try to tell her, but she shut me down. I
Hmm.
try to share with her how I liked what it was, how we were really more connected 10 years ago when she was thriving and feeling happy.
Hmm.
I would, it's like that's why we're in this intimate relationship. This is why we create these
Right.
sacred containers so we can grow and help up level each other because we're not always going to be on.
Right, right. And what you said also applies to the man's relationship with himself.
Yes.
Because I know in my case, and I know it with so many of the women that I've worked with too, the man is facing their own depression, their own career failures, their own life failures. And then they're the ones that are not reaching out. And then the cheating is the coping mechanism to make themselves feel better. Oh, I didn't get my promotion at work, cheating will give me that validation. And it's the man's dysfunctional relationship with himself that is leading into cheating as a coping mechanism to hopefully make himself feel better.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of that one.
Please.
Yes. So some women might not be able to draw the connection to sex, okay? But
Hmm.
it can look like this. So first off, imagine more than likely this hasn't been going on for a while.
Hmm.
For the last 3 years, you've been, say, on his butt. And you might have valid points to feel this way. But if you're speaking with him in that way where you're telling him what he's not doing and whether or not he deserves it or not, like what if he's really like just sitting on the couch and drinking beers and just always watching sports? I get this. So, but imagine where you're kind of sharing with him that he's not enough for
Hmm.
you in that moment. He doesn't hear that you want him to improve himself. He's not taking personal responsibility as far as to take those steps, like go to the gym or change his job or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden he has some younger woman at work texting him because he's in that position of being the boss. In that moment for the younger girl or the, say, inferior person that he's something, he starts to feel this pseudo uh, confidence to where, at least in that moment, this girl is looking up to him, which I
Hmm.
know sucks. And it's not really true. It's within that context. So even if she, say, is not educated, she's a hot mess, at least in that moment, he can feel maybe that he's
Better.
respected
Hmm.
or like a man. And
Hmm.
I've seen this happen countless times where, yes, he is actually he married this woman who was an attractive, even therapist.
Hmm.
She's a really good mother. She's doing everything. She's
Yes.
doing everything. And deep inside, he doesn't feel enough, but he won't do anything about it. And
Right.
so he takes the either unconscious or easy path. Well, this other person respects me. This other person likes me for who I am. And, the wife would probably say, of course she does. She doesn't freaking know you.
Exactly.
She doesn't witness how you drink a lot. She doesn't witness how you actually avoid conflict. She doesn't witness how you're a horrible parent. And
Hmm.
so, of course, and so men have a tendency, both men and women, but I would say men will lean more into pleasure
Yes.
over processing and doing the work. They'll
Yes.
just go to the next thing, the next thing.
And I'm glad that I'm writing that down, the pleasure over processing, because that is so true. And that's something that a lot of the women who listen to the show have had a concern about. That, okay, we're going to try to work it out. He's working on himself. I'm working on myself. We're seeing a couples therapist together. Oh my gosh, what if he does it again? And what I've been talking to them a lot about is even if he doesn't cheat again, if you just replace cheating with drinking,
Yeah,
gambling.
yeah.
It doesn't really matter. It's just a replacement, even if it's scrolling on your phone, any maladaptive coping mechanism is maladaptive. So, how do you address that with a man? What words of advice do you have on getting people to identify that or move through that?
Well, first off, if you are pushing your husband to go see a coach, such as you have to coerce him, he's not ready.
No.
So, bottom line, and if you presented that to him many times and he's still not saying yes to it, that's what you're working with. So, the next way to go about it is no matter what, then you go to improve yourself. So, you model the version that you'd be in a happy marriage anyway.
Hmm.
Because these are the things that can happen is that he's curious of why you're glowing and your body's looking better anyway.
Hmm.
Uh, he can also go to a place where he actually feels insecure about it and will throw things at you to bring you back
Yes.
to his misery.
Hmm.
But hopefully you're aware of that and don't play that game. Three, he recognizes that because of that new well-being, he actually is feeling less resistance with you, and then he becomes curious about seeing a coach or therapist. Okay, and
Yes.
so that's the best that we can do. However, if you are like looking for like literal things that you can say to a man to get him into therapy or coaching is that he needs to know what the benefits are. Bottom
I
line.
like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if he hears it as, oh God, I'm gonna be talking about my childhood where my dad was always like on my ass, uh, or he might go, there's just a lot of talking and like I don't want to leave there feeling bad to I don't want to have to admit that like I have unhealed trauma.
Right.
If you go about it that way, he might go, well, this is a lot of work. I don't know how this is going to make me feel better. So it might be becoming aware of how he's living his life as far as how he shows up with his friends at
Mhm.
work. Most women know that, however he is with you, he's shown up that way everywhere else as well.
Right.
So it might be kind of moving it from what's happening with the marriage to, like, let's say his name is Steve. Steve, I feel in my body sometimes when, you're not really moving in that direction you want, that it must not feel good. I wish I can do something. Like, I just know that sometimes people really feel a lot better when they see a coach I know I hear Steve, it sounds like heavy work, but what if you're carrying that every day anyway, and just with a couple of sessions, maybe you can lighten your load.
Yeah.
If it lighten your load, maybe we can go out and have, better times. It's like kind of like maybe drawing that bridge that it's going to move in a direction to create the life he wants, even like get a promotion.
Right. Right. Because you're right. As you show up in one area of life, you also show up in other areas of life. And that's what I loved when you were talking about, you're a life and relationship coach. They each have things to do with the other. It's not just in isolation.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the very last thing that I wanted to talk about and unpack a little bit more was that concept of wishful thinking. And it's come up kind of a couple times tangentially and also, by talking about wishful thinking. I think it's important to have hope. I think it's important to see our partner's potential and to see the best in each other. But it's also important to know when to draw the line and when to be like, I'm really sad. There is potential in this person and they're not interested and they're not living up to it. And all I can do is come back to my own potential and leaning into that. Do you have any words of wisdom around how much is too much and how to circle back around to yourself and to not get lost in living your life based on your partner's possible potential?
Well, particularly where I live, Ashland, Oregon, this is a community that's more interested in processing rather than progress. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is they have a tendency to like always want to talk about feelings. If you share feedback, they might tell you how your feedback made them feel versus whether or not it will help them or not. Okay. I'm bringing this up because traditional therapy is not so much about solutions. It's about processing. That's it. So a lot of times people will see me because I kind of give them a combination of the both, where I'll go into why a woman would remain in a relationship even though she knows that it's going nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
to her learning that she had like poor role models growing up, and that
Yeah.
therefore all she has known is men who are disconnected. Um, but there's got to be a solution. And what I mean solution is that every woman needs to give themselves permission to have some timeline and
Mm-hmm.
become okay with that. As an example, you might say, I'm going to give Tom 6 more months. You don't have to tell Tom that. And
No.
maybe that timeline will be a little flexible, but it's where I recognize I need to work on myself first.
Yes.
And because we have kids, to whatever it is that you've built together. And I still like Tom as a friend.
Right.
So in the meantime, I recognize I will not allow myself to feel like a victim in this.
Yes.
I will continue to do yoga, take walks, eat well, and I'll trust that as I do coaching or I read more self-help books and I take walks, that I'm gonna have a better version of myself anyway. And
Mm.
as you continue to grow in increments, you'll continue to, of course, look at your partner in different ways. You'll
Yes.
have different opinions about it. And it might become more positive and you recognize more of that was your own shit. But
Hmm.
if you recognize that, wait a minute, no, even if it were my stuff or not, I'm not sure if I met Tom today, I would even date him.
Right. Right.
To, what is it about me that will not accept him? And you recognize, wait a minute, those are actual deal breakers to me today. Then you
Yes.
start recognizing, oh, I'm never going to be able to get this cat to bark.
Right.
I'm never going to be able to get this cat to bark. And then from that, you might go, okay, I think it's time to end this. It's just not working.
Yes. Yes. And I love the idea of a timeline because that does give you enough time to do the processing, but then to stop the processing at some point when you have enough information.
Mhm.
So, where can listeners learn more about you?
Well, they can learn more about me by going to my website at RayDoktor. So it's my last name's pronounced Doctor, Ray at raydoktor.com. And from there, you can navigate to get to my book that's called All It Takes Is One. Uh, Drop Your One Big Hidden Belief and Master Your Life, which is all about what we talked about. It's kind of like a workbook as well, where there's questions in there that will be very revealing for you to recognize, oh, this is why I maybe remain stuck. And when you drop that one big hidden belief, you'll be able to move forward. You'll have a different perspective. You'll stop the self-sabotaging. So that's what it's all about. And then I have so many videos on YouTube as well, and
Mhm.
you can navigate to there as well through my website, or I'm sure you'll maybe provide some of these links down below.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All of his information will be below, linked to his website, all of that stuff. So, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. I think it was definitely appreciated by me, and I think the listeners are going to get a lot out of it as well.
Thank you very much. Actually, I just noticed your fireplace there.
Yeah, I love it. It's a little chilly today, so I gotta keep it warm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, listeners. Definitely check him out. Check out his book, his website, all that good stuff. Have an amazing week. And as usual, always remember to flaunt exactly who you are because who you are is always more than enough.